Good morning. My name is Jenny Baldone. I'm the clinical pharmacist here with Odenville Drugs, Asheville Drugs, and Main Street Drugs. We just wanted to cover some questions that we're constantly getting about the Moderna vaccine. This is the vaccine that we will be giving in the school system. Most everybody that is not in a hospital system is going to get the Moderna vaccine just because of the storage requirements of the vaccines. So I just want everybody to be able to make an informed decision when you're deciding whether or not to get the vaccine or not, because there's so many things on Facebook, social media. Every time you turn on the TV, there's a lot of misinformation. So we just want to clear up some of the major questions that we're getting. The first thing that's important to understand when you hear that these are messenger RNA vaccines, we hear constantly, does this interact with my DNA? Is this going to change my DNA? So I think it's really important just to basically understand what in the world is messenger RNA. Just to put it simply, messenger RNA is in everybody's body. Every day, your messenger RNA is making proteins in your body. If you make proteins, and you do, if you're living and breathing, then you're using messenger RNA to do that. This is no different. This vaccine makes you synthesize a protein. The main thing in the COVID virus is the spike protein that attaches to your cells and makes you sick. So what this vaccine is doing is using that messenger RNA, and all messenger RNA does is carry a code for the protein that it wants you to make. So they put the protein code on the messenger RNA, and it makes your body make that spike protein. And then your immune system kicks in and starts making antibodies to it. So if you get exposed to COVID after you've had this vaccine, your body has already synthesized that spike protein, and your antibodies that it made will attach to it instead of letting your cells attach to that spike protein in the COVID virus. And then that's how you don't contract COVID. Or if you do get COVID, and that small percent of people that still get it when they've had the vaccine, you don't have near the severity of symptoms. So that's the number one thing. It does not affect your DNA. Messenger RNA does not go into the nucleus of the cell. That's where your DNA is stored. It doesn't interact with it. It doesn't synthesize, and it is there and gone so quickly. So that brings me to the next big question we get. When somebody says to me, Jenny, I'm just really scared about getting this vaccine, the first thing I say is, tell me why. Tell me what you're worried about. Let's talk about it. Everybody has the right to decide what goes in their body, but you just want to make sure you're making an informed decision, so let's talk about what you're worried about. The next thing is y'all made it so fast. Well, there are some very good reasons of why this vaccine was able to be made so quickly. Number one, messenger RNA vaccines are the most efficient vaccines to make. The reason being, they don't require any preservatives. They're not, how you hear about the egg allergies with some things, because some vaccines, the way they're created, have to be cultured in different egg protein and things like that. That is not the case with messenger RNA, because all it has to do is carry that gene code for those proteins. So once the gene code was released in Wuhan, we had it. They were able to gene code this vaccine within 12 hours. Within 2 months, Moderna had enough vaccine manufactured to start the clinical trial. This is based on 17 years of SARS vaccine research, production, previous trials. This is not something new. Coronavirus is not anything new. One of the common cold strains is a coronavirus. So the people that do this every day for 17 years since we saw the first SARS case in 2003, they knew this already like the back of our hands. So while this pandemic has been devastating, one positive thing that I can say is we were kind of lucky on the vaccine stance that the pandemic that we did have in this country was the coronavirus, because there's people out there that knew this virus so incredibly well and were able to gene code a vaccine so quickly. So feel good to know that this is not something that we just started doing. Secondly, the storage thing, people are real scared about. We heard that it has to be in this ultra freezer, and all of these things are so scary that you hear on the news. Well, the only reason that that's the case is because it doesn't have all of those preservatives in it, and it is real fragile. Remember a few minutes ago when I said messenger RNA is there and gone once it releases that code to make the protein, it falls apart? Well, the same thing happens in the environment. All of these little enzymes that break down messenger RNA, they're on our fingers, they're in our tears. It's such a fragile thing because it's only carrying a gene code. So it has to be stored at very finite temperatures to keep that from breaking down. And that's the only reason that that is the case. But we figured out how to kind of wrap it in some lipids and make it more stable. We can keep it in the refrigerator for 30 days. We can keep it in the freezer for 6 months. But the reason it's so important that once you get on a list with COVID, that you're very diligent about kind of being flexible with time. And with you guys, we're definitely going to come in and come to you. But with your parents and other people that might be getting a phone call saying, hey, we've got some COVID vaccine availability today. Can you get in here within a few hours? The reason being is because once we open that vial, we've got 6 hours to give all 10 of those shots. And as hard as it is to get our hands on COVID vaccine, we do not want to waste one single dose. So when we're surprised with availability, we're making those phone calls as quickly as we can with people on our list to say, hey, we've got some availability. Can you come in here? One other thing I wanted to touch on was a big question is, if I had COVID and I've recovered, can I still get the vaccine? 100% you can. There's this 90-day thing that's out there that a lot of people are having a little bit of misconception about. If you were sick with COVID in the hospital and you received antibodies or convalescent plasma, then you do have to wait 90 days from when you received that treatment to get the vaccine. Just because you already have those antibodies and that plasma, and it'll affect the way the vaccine is created in your system, you won't get a full effect out of it. But the recommendation from the CDC is that once you've recovered from COVID and you're out of your isolation period, if the vaccine is made available to you, then you get it, because those antibodies are really all over the board on how long they're hanging out in people's systems. So once you feel good and you're out of isolation, if you can get the vaccine and it's in your phase, then go ahead and get it. I know there's so many other questions that people have about the vaccine, but we only have so little time, and I really wanted to hit the main points of what we're hearing. If y'all have any other questions, anything that I haven't covered, please call us. Please reach out to any of our pharmacists. Call me, you can call Stephanie. We really want to make sure that everybody makes an informed decision when they're deciding whether or not to get the vaccine. And just on a side note, if you're pregnant, if you're breastfeeding, please reach out to your OB or your doctor and get the recommendation from them. Most of the time we are seeing with pregnancy, if you're out of your first trimester, most of the OBs are still recommending that you get the vaccine, but that's going to be very dependent on your personal situation. So please reach out to them and have a conversation with them about if the vaccine is best for you if you're pregnant or breastfeeding.